This is the playthrough for a mission I've been working on called the Zavod Situation, focusing on the action around a Russian-held weapons factory. The idea is for a mechanized US battalion to cross a river and assault the factory on a wide front, defended by well-dug-in Russian reservist units. Since this is a battalion-sized operation, I've broken the playthrough up into 3 parts, for which there will be links in the description. This is part 1, where we secure the western side of the river and get scouts across. The briefing states that the US forces have been pushing Russian lines and have become aware of a weapons factory held just behind the front line, located across this river. This makes US Mechanized ideal to cross that natural barrier in their M113s and destroy the weapons factory. This is, of course, a fictional scenario. The primary mission is the destruction of the factory itself, but several secondary objectives surround the factory's main complex, including a radio tower that needs to be disabled, along with several strong points north and east of the complex. Your force is 2nd Battalion, who will commence the operation at 0910 with a direct assault across the river, sweeping aside any Russian defenders. Since the complex is quite built up, 2nd Company engineers are en route to assist with breaking into the factory. The river has 2 major bridges across, the North and South Bridge, which we believe are still intact. Additionally, the M113s should be able to ford at some locations, but that will be for you to determine once you're on the ground. Enemy forces are reserve units who have hastily entrenched themselves around the factory. We believe they suffer from limited supply, but potentially have access to some T-55 tanks, so we have assigned Cobra gunships, which will be on station within the hour to assist. Sitting just east of where we start out, our force is broken into 2 sections, north and south. This is the river that we're going to be crossing. The 2 bridges mentioned in the briefing are the North Bridge and the South Bridge. Our first objective is going to be the radio tower, which is situated on this raised hill there. And our secondary objectives from that point will be obviously the factory itself, but we also have a farmhouse here and a farmhouse further back. We'll call that the North Farm and the East Farm. The strategy is going to be to move 1st Platoon towards North Bridge and 3rd Platoon towards South Bridge. Scouts are going to move to cross the river and try and take the objective of the radio tower. 2nd Platoon is going to move into this forested area here and provide support for that action. So this is the more or less middle part of the map. We have the radio tower, our first objective, sitting there in that forested area. In front of it here, we've got a bit of a lodge. And this will be the first thing that the scouts have to navigate with their approach. They are going to be approaching across this raised area here. And our goal is fundamentally to get the M113s wading across, establish a bit of a bridgehead here, secure that lodge, and then move on further to the radio tower itself. 2nd Platoon is going to be positioned in this forested line here. And they'll be providing essentially cover fire across there. This is the North Bridge. We will be approaching with 1st Platoon from down here. There's a bit of a raised area just north there where we can set up some cover fire positions, and we will approach with some of the squads through the forest itself. In terms of the enemy, they do have the railroad track running perpendicular to our approach. There's good cover behind that, so we'll have to see how we navigate that. South Bridge with the lodge in the distance there and the radio tower just up there. There's a bit of a muddy field here, which will make it potentially difficult for M113s and across the way there. The bridge itself, I suppose the most worrisome position, because we know it's defended by the Russians, is all this high ground here, forested high ground. This is a great position, of course, to defend the bridge from. We, on the other hand, have a slight raised area here, and we'll have to try and engage like that. So to start off with, 2nd Battalion is obviously moved around with a hell of a lot of M113s. So we're going to move those forward. Here you can see the scouts approaching across the river of the objective. And they of course have access to the M901, which has got 2 tows on top. Doesn't take long for the first spots. This is 2nd Platoon, and they've spotted a drill car already at the radio tower. So of course we first have to disable this before we bring any sort of air support anywhere near this. Top of the screen there we can see the scouts and 1st Platoon. In the middle, a little bit down, that's 2nd Platoon shooting at the shell car. And to the right there is 3rd Platoon lining up on the forest edge to cross the South River. So just getting 2nd Platoon dismounted so they can take a position in the forest and support the scouts as they make the crossing. In the meantime, the scouts are moving up. They're just trying to get into a hold down position and have a look at that lodge across the river. And 1st Platoon right in the north there, just rushing ahead to take up their positions at the North Bridge. 3rd Platoon dismounting. They're going to get into the forest edge across the way and see if they can get eyes on the South Bridge. That shell car is not too determined to defend itself, so we do score the first casualty. Start making a few spots across the river. Russian infantry dug in. Not too determined to stay there. In the foreground there you can see 1st Platoon. They're rushing up to the North Bridge. The scouts have not started moving yet. Everybody just easing slowly forward before we dismount. Definitely some defenders at the lodge. Looks like infantry only at this point. On the south side, 3rd Platoon is just slowly edging forward, keeping their eyes peeled. So what we do have at our disposal is a hell of a lot of mortars. So we're going to start the scouts out with a bit of a strike on the lodge. Need to soften that up.
Bring us some indirect.
The scouts and 2nd Platoon easing forward. And we're starting to lay more and more fire into the lodge itself. Even a dragon or two won't go amiss. The Russians are obviously not going to take this lying down. They get a RPG out. This is 1st Platoon near the North Bridge. They are all dismounting. We're going to move them into the forest. Well, half the squads. The other half are going to move towards the ridgeline. And then we'll bring the M113s forward to provide some support. Not going to hesitate on using this artillery support. This is the mortar platoon. One of their spotters just snuck in on the left there, and we're going to start dropping mortars on the south bridge as well.
Bring us some indirect.
We do make a few BTR spots in the forest on the distance from the south bridge. Not too worried about them just yet. It's quite far off. Closer the scouts get to the river, they start picking up more and more contacts. This is a heavy machine gun just south of the lodge. Just spotting around, landing near the lodge. We're going to have to tune that one in a bit better. We can see here that their platoon has reached the edge of the forest, so they're having good eyes on the south bridge. And then the rounds start falling near the lodge. In the meantime, the scouts have decided that a few toes will be on this. So they're being a bit wasteful here and shooting into the lodge.
Splash out.
First platoon, north bridge, moving up to the ridgeline. We'll start getting some eyes across there and see what we're dealing with at this bridge. So at this point, it doesn't quite yet seem safe to make any crossings. We'll just keep trying to edge forward and see if we can make additional spots. See if we can get some kills in. Even at the south bridge, we got the mortars starting to fall.
Message to observer. Bravo 3 rounds. 4 guns in effect. Target number Sierra Tango 256.
Scouts being a bit risky. We're moving them across the hold down position. Now that the mortars are complete. Slow advance for the scouts forward towards the river. And then our first M113 gets disabled. Some sort of Russian anti-tank weapon. In the meantime, first platoon is moving up. They're going to get eyes on the river very soon. Time to bring some more firepower in. This is the anti-tank platoon. They're leaving the starting location and heading towards the south bridge. South Bridge where the mortars are now falling. Second platoon dismounting their M113s. They're going to go forward in the tree line and support the scouts, which are about to make their crossing. We're right aside to get the mortar platoon forward observers to put down some additional mortars across the South Bridge. There's just too many potential contacts still visible.
We need some indirect.
AT platoon rushing forward towards the South Bridge. And the scouts commencing their crossing. The disabled M113 manages to get a tow towards the North Bridge, miles away.
Record his target.
Confirming fire mission. Shells inbound.
Third platoon on the other side of the tree line is now starting to engage targets across the South Bridge. At the North Bridge, first platoon have just reached the ridgeline. They're starting to sneak up and get some eyes on. As I thought, there is some Russian resistance on the other side of the railroad tracks. They've also got some stationary anti-tank weapons, so we're definitely going to keep the M113s back a bit. There's also a bunker just on the left there of the screen. That's going to be a bit difficult to deal with. Time to keep the mortars going. North Bridge, and first platoon's spotter gets a good opportunity here to essentially eliminate part of the railway track if we
Bring us
can.
some indirect.
Splash over.
There does seem to be the odd mortar round falling on our side of the river. The Russians might have access to some mortars themselves. The scouts have made the crossing. We didn't seem to take any casualties with that. First platoon, North Bridge. We're going to keep engaging until we can get that round of mortars on that. Meantime, that disabled M901 is going to keep engaging that bunker on the North Bridge.
Fire for effect.
Придется отступить.
Yeah, the scouts are dismounting. I'm not going to be too bothered about the lodge. I'm actually going to bypass that and move them into the forest towards the radio tower, which is one of our secondary objectives. We do take some sniper fire across the way there. And an RPG. And here's our culprit, just south of the northern tree line towards the radio tower. We've got a squad of Russians. We're going to have to deal with them.
Fire for effect.
Scouts taking some additional casualties.
Record his target. Intermission target arrest lowered.
Southbridge and the next round of mortars are falling. When this is over, we'll start making our advance.
Record his target. Intermission target arrest lowered.
In the meantime, the scouts are having a hard time getting engaged in the forest just south of the radio tower. They are managing to dish it out as well. Scouts keep clearing the way into the forest. There also seems to be a bit more resistance from the lodge itself. So M901's putting some toes in from the scout platoon. The scouts near the radio tower have managed to push back the Russians there. So now they can advance onto the radio tower itself. This is mortar fire coming down at the North Bridge. First platoon, they're just waiting to advance across. Getting ready for the advance on the South Bridge. This is the mortar platoon calling in some smoke. We want third platoon there in the bottom of the screen to move up the moment they get an opportunity. Definitely caused a lot of damage to the Russians across the South Bridge there. You can see a lot of them running, so hopefully when we start the push, we won't take too many casualties of our own. Even the anti-tank platoon assisting. Putting some toes down range. Back with the lodge, some scattered resistance. And at the North Bridge, the mortars keep falling. We've also pushed up the M113s from 1st Platoon to start getting some fire across onto that bunker. Seems the 50 cals are making good work of that timber bunker. Seems it won't be much of a problem after all.
Confirming fire mission.
Spot 2nd Platoon in the tree line there, taking 1 or 2 casualties, still from the lodge actually. This is also 2nd Platoon's APCs just moving around the tree line there to provide additional support. We're going to keep putting toes into the lodge.
Coordinates received.
A little bit south on the riverbank there from the lodge. Still a few Russians shooting back. So I decided to move 2nd Platoon up, try and get some good firing positions from the edge of the forest. That bunker across the north bridge is pretty much cleared out now. And we've got a few Russian stragglers falling back. But we do have some dug-in Russian positions, so we'll have to clear those before we can think about crossing that bridge. You can see the anti-tank platoon moving up the main road there towards Southbridge. They're going to provide essentially support for 3rd Platoon to cross over.
Splash out.
Splash. Over.
Various dug-in positions around the South Bridge. Still lobbing a few RPGs our way. Platoon engaging the lodge and everything around it. Using dragons, everything at their disposal. And then the scouts are adding to the chaos here at the lodge. In the meantime, various squads from the scout platoon are starting to make their way up to the radio tower. We're going to try and approach that from 2 angles if we can. Yeah, we're just driving some additional Russians from the forest to the north of the lodge. Southbridge, and the anti-tank platoon is going crazy with the tows, but also the smoke screen is starting to build. So that's good. There can't be too much alive on the other side of that bridge. There's first platoon approaching through the tree line towards the North Bridge. Just taking it carefully. I don't know if there's anything on this side of the river. Low screen building nicely. We should be good to go on the South Bridge.
Ford is targeting position. Target suppressed. Target suppressed. Out.
Anti-tank platoon moving up. We'll keep the pressure on the Russians. And then third platoon is going to start the advance across that field, using the smoke as cover, of course. In the meantime, the best solution for the lodge was simply just to eliminate it.
Ford is target. End of mission. Target suppressed. Over.
North Bridge, and it's gone very quiet. That's a good sign, right?
Ford is target. End of mission. Target suppressed. Over.
So this is a good view of the North Bridge. You can see two squads there in the front. They've got a good position, and the M113s now pushing forward just to make sure that there's no other contacts we forgot about. Still one or two stragglers poking their heads out. Scouts slowly advancing towards the radio tower on the hill. There's not a lot of scouts, so we're just being careful here. And then we start approaching the radio tower buildings. Tiny little compound, 3 buildings. South Bridge, and the advance has commenced. Moving the APCs and the various squads. We're just going to keep moving to look at the west bank of the river, and then take care if there's any other Russians on the opposite bank. And if we see an opportunity, we're going to do a crossing. We do manage to spot this isolated little BTR.
going switches hot.
Dragon copies. We're seeing some vehicles here. We're engaging.
The radio tower and our first squad from the scouts there is poking their head out, trying to have a look around. And met by some machine gun fire and some casualties ensue. We have managed to move 1st and 3rd platoon up to their various west banks of the river at the north and south bridge. Coming in for fire, we should be good to go to commence with the main crossing. BTR slows it down with the 50 cals and then follow it up with a Dragon. The scouts are going to fall back a tiny little bit and just do a bit of a regroup. We're going to need some more firepower to take that radio tower. Isolated small engagements here and there, but generally I think we've created the gap we need to get across that river. North Bridge and the APCs are going to start lining up on the road there to get the squads into them. Seems like the Russians are doing a general withdrawal from the river. I suppose we'll meet them at the factory. But that's the end of part 1. In the next video we'll cross that river, run into 1 or 2 surprises and prepare for the main assault on the Zavod factory. In the description there's a link to part 2, and if you would like to give this a try, there's also a link to the mission for you to download.